Hello and welcome to Conversations with Irma. How are you all doing? I trust you are amazing wherever you are. I trust you are grateful for the gift of life, grateful for anything that's happening in your life. I love to say that if you wake up and you check yourself and you're like, I'm breathing, I'm healthy, that is enough reason to be thankful and grateful, because trust me, this breathing, it's not to be taken for granted. It's a joy to be here one more time. And today, I never disappoint you guys. So I have an amazing lady joining us today on the show. She is a mother. She is a CEO, a whole CEO. She is a consultant. She does a lot of things. And the thing is, she has so many interesting things about, herself, her life. But I was curious to know more about her when I learned her journey. She's been in so many countries, and how come she is here in Kigali, in Rwanda? So without further ado, I know you're curious to know who am I going to welcome today. But this is CHARA ITOKA with me here. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's a joy to have you today.
It's wonderful to be here.
So you know where we're starting our conversation?
Mm-hmm.
I want to know.
Yes.
Born in Liberia.
Yes.
You grew up in the US.
Yes.
You had your education in France, in the UK.
Yes.
Went back home.
Yes.
Went back to the US, and
Yes.
now you're here with me.
Yes.
So tell me more
about my
that,
journey.
about your journey.
Yeah. So when I was 5 years old, my father went to school in the US. So that's how I ended up in the US. It wasn't like a choice or anything, but looking back, it was definitely the right time. So I grew up there. I went to school there. 3 years after we landed, the war broke out back home. So in a sense, we were stuck in the US. And so I grew up there by default. Mm-hmm. And I did all of my primary and secondary schooling. And then I went to the UK. Well, I went to France first for my university degree. And then I went to school in the UK for graduate school. And then I went back home. I always wanted to go back to Liberia. It had been 21 years since I went back. Mm-hmm. And that was a major part of my journey, really going back home, helping to contribute to the rebuilding and recovery of the country.
Wow.
And then, should I tell you how I got here?
Of course.
After that,
interesting part.
Many years after that, I came to Kigali. I came for some work, and then I ended up opening my consulting firm here, and we stayed. So it's been almost 5 years.
5 years in Kigali.
5 years in Kigali.
And do you love it?
I love it. I love it. It's different. It's very different from West Africa. But I've adjusted. We found our community. And I have a 9-year-old son who is really thriving here. So we're doing well.
That's just beautiful.
Thank
you. So tell me, having all that exposure, being in different cultures.
Yes.
So which culture do you call yours?
I would say I'm Liberian. That's my first, primary, my foundation, my roots. I'm Liberian. Even though my family has other roots, my mother's half Sierra Leonean. My dad is technically half Togolese. So you would just call me ECOWAS. That's my nickname, very much so. But then I've also acculturated parts of the American culture too, because I grew up in Boston. And so when I think about my principles and some of my values, it's been influenced by the US in that way too. Yeah, in my way of thinking, there's definitely a bit of a mixture there.
Yeah, and I think it's somehow an advantage because you get to understand, different people. You get to understand their differences.
Absolutely.
You get to read different cultures because you've had that exposure.
Yeah.
And I really love that.
I appreciate it. I definitely grew up as an immigrant in the US. I grew up in immigrant communities, which is something that played a major part in my growth as well. I wasn't growing up there as an American. I was growing up as a Liberian in a Liberian family within this larger new culture that we were living in and trying to adjust and navigate. Yeah, it really impacted my life for sure.
That's just nice. When I try to think about it, I'm like, that has been an interesting journey.
Yeah, definitely is interesting.
So I want to know, having those experiences, being by yourself, moving from one country to another.
Yes.
Of course, I know, on the journey we encounter challenges,
Absolutely.
Like, what was your strength all those years?
Well, I'm a person of faith, so I believe in God. I'm also a person of family. Wherever I've lived, I've tried to find community. I've tried to connect with my family. In the UK, I have family in London. They played a major part in my experience. In France, I didn't, but I had like friends of friends that really shaped my experience. And then your friends can become your family. So I think that's a big part of being rooted in my faith, being rooted in community, which could be my friends or it could be my family. They're the ones I really lean on in order to kind of really settle in during that time.
Wow, I love that. And you being a CEO of ITOKA Group, you being a consultant,
Yes.
is it something you've always wanted to become or to be, like ever since you were young? Or like how did your career journey develop?
Yeah, I never knew what a consultant was when I was young. Thinking back, I wanted to be a teacher. I guess like in primary school, if you asked me, what do you want to be? I'd say, oh, I want to be a teacher. Which looking back, it's kind of the foundation of what I've taken with me along my journey, because teaching and educating is a part of the consulting work I do. Like if I'm training, I've also taught at a university. So looking back, I can see that, okay, teaching is the foundation and being an educator. And I just like to talk as a kid. I was always a talker, very much a performer. In secondary school, I wanted to be an actor. I liked being on stage. And in consulting, am I acting? No, but I'm advising. I'm in a position of leadership. I'm guiding, and all of that kind of goes back to being an educator and being interested in this type of teaching kind of perspective to my work. Yeah.
Yeah. So what can you tell, especially, young people who are watching us, someone who wants to to choose a path, a career, like, is there any keys or any wisdom you can give them, like just to save them time? Like if someone comes to you, I would love really to be a person, I want to excel in my career. What can you tell them? What should they focus on? Is there anything they should think about in their personal journeys?
I would say start with what you're drawn to, because I really feel like that is a natural and organic thing, because we're drawn to certain things. And there's all these pressures, right? There's what our parents want us to do, what society says are the key careers to pursue, and then there's what resonates with us. So I would start there. I would start at my core. I would start at what I feel passionate about. I would start there. And then I would try to practice those things. If I want to, let's say, become a doctor, I would, focus on some courses that are in the sciences. I would see how I'm excelling at it. I would see, kind of practice it, test it out, see if it really does resonate. Because sometimes we have a desire of our heart, and then as we're pursuing that path, we're like, okay, this is definitely not for me, and we may have other desires we want to pursue.
Exactly.
But you have to start with yourself and not your parents, and not what you think is the right thing to do. Start with what resonates with me first, and then you practice it, and then you pursue it if that's the path you want to go, so that you build your skill set, that you build your education within this certain kind of interest area or career. So you really do need to practice a thing. That's something I always encourage young people to do, is to take your time, not just study something academically, but also, because I'm a practitioner, like I love the practice of, I like to work, but I like to be within the work as well. So it's not just policy, it's also, how does that hit the ground? How is it practiced? So take that time to practice as well.
And how do you connect having a passion for something, having something that resonates with who you are and how you are wired, how you are designed, and having a certain opportunity? Because sometimes you like something, you love something, but you don't have the opportunity to do that.
Yes.
So how do you that in between what I can do, what I would love to do, and what's available
and
right
the opportunities.
now, the opportunities.
I want to encourage people to also consider creating opportunities for yourself, because I think sometimes we wait for opportunities to happen, and we pursue, we apply for jobs, which we should do. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but I think now in recent years, things have really opened up. You'll see someone create a YouTube channel which can create opportunities, you see. So they did not wait for the opportunity to come to them. They created their path.
Absolutely.
So I encourage people to apply, take courses, study, but also make your own course, create your own conversations, create your own organization, volunteer, practice it, not just wait for the opportunity to come to you. Yeah.
And if we apply that to our community, let's say our Rwandan community, where like people are struggling to have jobs, especially young people.
Right.
We have a lot of young people that are educated. It's like they want to work, but where should I work?
Exactly.
They have ideas, but they don't have the money to start any type of business.
Right.
So what can you tell them?
I would say to volunteer. There are lots of ways to kind of practice your craft, be engaged without spending any money. So if you know someone that needs some support in a certain area, let's say you're a great graphic designer, but you don't have a graphic design firm and you're not working in that field, you don't have a job, you might want to volunteer at your church, at your mosque, at your school, saying, I will make these flyers for you. You don't have to pay me for this. I'm not saying all the time you're going to do that, but just so that you can put your name out there in the initial stages. People have, obviously, they have bills, they have responsibilities. So you're not always going to do free work, but to get your feet wet, to build some experience within the field, that's something you can do. And then people may hear of you, they may recommend you. But I always put out there the caveat, you're not going to do that all the time.
Yeah.
But you can do it sometimes so that you can offer, especially if it's with an organization that you really care about, an issue that you really care about, then you may want to volunteer so that people will refer back to you, like this person did an excellent job, and then it can open up opportunities for you to make money within that work. I would recommend not just sitting down and lamenting your situation.
Exactly.
Because one thing for me that I will not allow myself to do, and sometimes it starts, right? Like you start to feel bad for yourself, or it comes to your mind, or a negative thought comes in. I always say to myself, I do not lament my situation. Okay? I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to be positive about it.
Exactly.
I'm not saying I won't feel the feelings I feel. That's normal. We're human.
Yeah.
But don't just sit there and just say, oh, it's just a situation here. Nobody's going to hire me. While you're looking at the situation, start creating, be a creator.
Really
and it doesn't mean you have to be like a new title, like I'm a creative and I'm doing all that. But we're all creators, right? We can make something. We can make something with our words. We can create things. We can put it online. We can put our ideas out there. So just don't sit back and say, Rhonda's just this way. This is just how my life's going to be. No, because even through your words, you're creating your situation.
I love that. So
spin it, like create a new situation for yourself. And just be proactive. Like I said, volunteer where you can, work as much as you can, but you might even work and still volunteer on the side. Many of us have had like our full-time jobs and then have done our passion projects on the side.
Exactly.
So don't limit yourself, but don't lament. Don't limit yourself and don't lament, because once we start to pity ourselves, it's harder to get up. It's harder to move forward. So when the idea comes in, you have to kind of put a stop to it. For me, I even speak like vocally, I will say, out loud. It may sound kind of crazy if you're with other people in the house, but get by yourself and just say, I'm not going to lament the situation. I'm going to do something about this situation.
I love that. I love that. And what I understand by what you're saying is that everything starts with a mindset.
It does.
Because if you want to change a situation, you have to start believing that it can change.
Absolutely.
You have to start embracing the positivity in your mind.
Absolutely.
And once you're positive, no matter the current situation, no matter what's present, it's gonna change. Because your mouth can create.
Absolutely.
So we have to use our minds and our mouth.
Yep.
And as we speak the positivity, as we speak what we want to see happening, eventually it's going to happen. And also, even if, it takes time to happen, there's something, beautiful that comes with positivity. Because even that situation that is not the best, you're going to enjoy it somehow. Or let me even say, you're going to survive it, but in a healthy way.
You're gonna learn,
but if you
yes.
just go and you pity yourself, you lament, you're like, oh, I'm never going to amount to anything, you know, is this going to change? As you said, you will feel the feelings.
Oh, yeah. And you're not redeeming the time.
Exactly.
See, I feel like a lot of people forget about the process. You know, they ignore the...
Tell us about it. Tell us about it. Tell us about the process.
Everything I'm sharing is from my own life experience. The process, there's so much learning in the process. I always tell my son this. It's the process. The learning is in the process. Like, we want to get to the product. We want to get to the end. We want to get to our goals. But as we're going along the way, there's so much that can happen, including a shift. But like you're saying, if we're speaking, let's flip it. If you're speaking negative, say you start to lament and you start to speak negative over your life, what happens? It is what you say it is, right?
Wow.
If you're feeling sad and you keep speaking like I'm nobody, all these things, you will continue down that path. But the only way to get out of that path and to redeem the time in between one job to the next job is to use the time well, you know? I always think about what I do have, you know? And I mean, and it's very biblical in lots of ways when God was like, what do you have in
What
your
do you
hand?
have? What's
exactly.
in your hand?
What's in your hand? And it's kind of like, what? Oh, this, you know? And so I want all of us to think of that too. What do we have? We could be unemployed, but it's like, but what do you have? And for me, one of the things, like I said, I love to talk. I love to communicate. I love to engage. And part of being a good consultant is asking good questions. A lot of it is just starting with critical thinking. And that I know I have. I know God created me this way as a curious person, as an inquisitive person. So I'm going to use that. And so it's having conversations like this. It's writing. I love to write. I love to create through that medium. So that's what I have. Now, no one could necessarily be paying me for my writing, but I could put my writing out there. There are lots of platforms.
Exactly.
So find the platforms that embrace you, but don't stop creating.
Wow. I feel like tweeting that. Find a platform that embraces you.
That embraces you. And there are lots of them.
They are.
There's so many nowadays.
They are. Yeah. So I always love to say that. First of all, you need to accept yourself as God has created you.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? Look at yourself as if you are someone who belongs to be here. You are here because you're supposed to be here. And you're here because you need it. And you're here because you have value. And you're here because you're gifted. And you're here because you yourself, you are a gift.
Absolutely.
And the moment you practice that and you get to understand that, no matter your situation, look in a room as if you belong. Look at what you have. As you said, what's in your hand?
Yeah.
Can you write? Can you communicate? Can you design? Can you talk? Can you listen?
Do you
Can you
well?
do something technical? Like anything you're capable of doing,
Yes.
just you have to believe that it's needed somewhere.
Absolutely.
You have to believe that it's going to be it's something that adds value. So that's why the mindset
starts there. Yes. And no one has to validate that. I feel like oftentimes we're waiting for someone to validate us, either through employing us or clapping for us or liking our post. But you have value as is, like from the beginning.
Whether we see it or not.
No one has to even tell you have value. It's already, it's innate. So I want people to embrace that as well, because oftentimes, and I think with young people, but all of us, with young people, it's like, well, this person likes me, this person likes my platform, this person supporting, I don't have a big sponsor, I don't have this, I don't have that. But within yourself, just know that you're valuable. And if you keep along that path, other people will see it. But most important, you got to see it first.
Yeah, like you shouldn't wait for others to believe in you before you start believing in yourself.
Right.
You start believing in yourself and others will come along.
Of course.
They're going to join.
Oh, they will, because God created you. The beauty in you is going to shine. Now, it might not be the person you think will join, but the right people will join.
Eventually, they will.
Absolutely.
I'm loving this. For those who just joined us, welcome, welcome. This is Conversations with Irma, and we're having a good conversation, inspiring conversation, and I hope you just enjoy with us. I am with CHARA ITOKA, and she is just sharing, her experience, her life journey, some of the lessons that she's been learning and that she's, willing to share with us, and that's what she's doing. So tell me.
Yes.
There's something, I wouldn't say it's a process, but I would say turning points.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a process, the entire thing,
Yeah.
which I believe we never stop. Like, it's a life thing, it's a lifetime thing.
Yes.
But there are some turning points in our lives, that you can recall.
Yes.
You're like, when this happened,
Yeah.
that was a shift.
That's key.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you share with us some of those turning points in your life?
Yeah. I would say my first one was when I went back to Liberia. Because imagine, I was going back to a place that I dreamt of. Your memories up to age 5 can be quite limited. There's certain key things you remember about a place, about a smell, about your house, about your home. But then for 21 years, I didn't see this home. And it was damaged in a lot of ways because that's the result of war.
Yeah.
So going back at 26 and just expecting to just kind of like hit the ground and just like, all my family's going to embrace me. And no one will tell that I've been out of the country for that long. Or, you just kind of fit right in. It was a wake-up call. Like, I definitely went home. I had some beautiful experiences. I went with my mom, which was amazing because, I didn't go alone. It was just like she already kind of ushered me in, really guided me. But then I had to deal with how it is to be a diasporan, going back home, relearning some things, seeing some really beautiful parts of your culture, seeing parts of your culture that are challenging, all of that. It was a real turning point for me and a real shift in my understanding of who I am. And I'm still kind of building from that point. But yeah, that was a really big turning point for me.
Wow,
Yeah.
I can imagine, like, reconnecting with your roots.
Reconnecting with your roots, things that you romanticize, being abroad. It's like, oh, but if I was back home,
Exactly.
it would be like this. Especially with
Exactly.
conflict and some negative parts of the immigrant experience. Being an immigrant isn't always great. Like, I talked to some of my cousins who didn't leave Liberia. They're like, oh, it must have been like this. And I'm like, there were a lot of sad points. There are a lot of negative times. There's racism. There's discrimination that you experience outside of your home country. And that longing, I just want to be home.
Exactly.
Then you go home and you're like, oh, okay, there's some negative sides of home. It's not perfect because nothing is perfect. We romanticize things, right?
Exactly. Nothing is perfect.
So
And
that's learning.
we need to, like, embrace the entire thing. All
Just
of
like
it.
we have all different layers and we have negative sides too. So back our home countries, our cultures have shadow sides too.
Exactly.
That aren't so beautiful or pretty. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. And what are your proudest moments in your life?
Okay, I'm trying to think. Let me try to narrow it down to I would say my son, the birth of my son, I would say. And that's like not a career moment, but that's a personal moment.
Yeah.
Very much my proudest moment. Just the experience of like the journey of pregnancy, labor and delivery, all of that. I'll save you the details, but it's not easy. Or at least for me, it wasn't an easy experience. But just to see him and just to be a parent, I think parenting is it's the toughest job you'll ever love. I think it is not easy and people don't talk so much about the challenges, but I want to also say the joys are immeasurable. I've never experienced the kind of joy I've experienced as a parent. And I have my own personal joys, but as a parent, like seeing a human being kind of grow and develop and ask their own questions and excel in areas that I don't even understand, that has been a very proud moment, I would say. Another proud moment, just being able to juggle so many different things. As you mentioned earlier, the journey has taken me to a lot of different places, but I've been able to manage, to be a personal manager of my life. And that has been a proud moment that I'm still experiencing.
Wow. And you being a parent, like, where did you learn that from? Like, is it from your mother? Is it something that comes naturally?
Oh gosh, I think there's definitely some modeling that I've learned from my mom. My mom is a saint. I'm going to say this. My mom is a saint. I do not have the patience.
I hope she's watching this.
Yes, I do not have the patience my mom has. Our personalities are very different. My mom is quiet, introverted. I got my extroverted kind of vocal side from my dad. But my mother, her background is early childhood education. So I grew up in schools. I grew up babysitting. I've been a babysitter. Like I've been around children since I think I started babysitting at 13. Maybe that's my first job ever, babysitting. And then being an auntie, I have 4 nieces and nephews. So just that experience has helped. But honestly, nothing truly will prepare you for being a parent. I think it's trial by fire. Like, you have to know, because you don't know the child that you're going to have. And you're learning that child. And then you're learning yourself too. Because now you're a mother. You weren't a mother before. And there are things about you didn't know. There are triggers you may have that you didn't know because no one pushed those buttons. So, yeah, there's beauty in it. There's so much joy. But there's a lot you learn through the experience. I've read a lot of books, but the books don't compare to the practice and the application of the principles you learn in the books.
Yeah, it's one thing to read it, and it's another thing to live it and experience it.
Living it, yes. And that goes back to the practice. We have to practice what we believe. How do you know you really believe something? How do you know your value is? I'll give an example. Let's say you do not believe in spanking or hitting a child. You say that in principle, but when you're in the moment where the child is doing something outrageous and you're like, oh, why do I feel this urge to do something?
And then you have to practice the kid.
Right. And so then you're like, well, let me connect my value to my practice. And you make a choice. Just like every day we're making choices. So yeah, that's just one example. And that's probably even a small example. Discipline is a part of parenting. But there are other examples like, what am I going to model to my son? Because they're watching you. And they learn more from modeling than lectures. Like some of us, our parents can talk. Oh, you better do this, better do that. But we're watching. It's like, well, you tell me not to yell, but you're yelling.
You're yelling.
Yeah, you tell me not to hit my friend, but you hit me. So children are always making those connections, and they're watching us. So it's a lot of responsibility, but it gives you moments of learning opportunities that I've never experienced in any other area.
Wow. And what are the most important keys you consider as a parent?
I would say shaping your values, knowing your values for your family. So there's my personal values, like integrity, honesty, and then their values for the family too, which can be the same, being honest with each other. But some of the values that have come up for me and my son are about creating. I feel like a lot of times young people now, and all of us, we're always on social media, we're always consuming. And we're consuming, interesting things.
Talk about that.
Yeah, we're consuming films, we're consuming art, and all of that is wonderful. Art is great. We should consume. But one of our values in my family, for me and my son, is don't just consume, create. I want him to not just watch a TV show. I want him to draw the comic. Because he gets excited about certain things, and he's like, "Well, Mom, I would love to be an animator." Okay. Well, you like animation? Let's work on something, He loves music, so he plays the piano. He plays the djembe, he plays the drums. Those are things, so it's not just taking in art that others create. Try to create for yourself too. That's a value within our family. So, and I use that for if he's watching TV for 2 hours, it's like, okay, you've consumed what others have created, and that's good. But now it's time. Go read, go write. Let's do some comic books. Go play music. Just get into the flow, get into the vibe. So that's one of our values. Another one that I'll just share is just about culture. Being proud of who you are, where you're from. And even though he hasn't been, I was pregnant in Liberia, so he hasn't been to Liberia on this side of my stomach. But understand your culture, eat your foods, learn the history. Especially when he was living in the U.S., there's a lot of space where being from Africa can be dismissed or looked down upon. Yeah. So I make sure that my son understands that we have a rich culture, and that it's something that you should be very proud of.
Wow, thanks for sharing. I'm learning something. I'm not a parent yet, but I'm like, this makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. So talking about sharing about your personal life, do you have any regrets in your life?
I have no regrets. I don't believe in regrets. It's kind of similar to the whole lamenting piece, because if I sit in that space of regret, I'm not focused on the right thing. Because even looking back, there are things I learned and there's some choices I look back and I'm like, that wasn't a good choice.
Yeah.
But do I sit and regret it? No. It's a choice that I made at the time with the information that I had
That you
at the
had,
time.
had the knowledge that you had
Yeah,
at the
or
time.
the lack of knowledge. You know what I mean? I didn't know certain things because you're growing. You're in an environment. Maybe you were in a negative environment. Maybe you were negatively influenced. But I made a choice. And I think it's important to own our choices that we made.
That's
Not saying
right.
I would do it again, but I've mentored young women and we've talked about some of my negative choices I've made. So maybe I had that experience so that I can share with someone else about a different path they could have taken. So I try to use what I've experienced instead of pushing it down and sitting in regret. Because when you regret, you're ashamed. And then you won't want to share that lesson that you learned because you don't want to really tell anybody. Yeah, so I believe in not having regrets and really focusing on the lesson.
Yeah, but the moment you own your choices and you own your mistakes, then you can talk about it. You can teach someone else.
Absolutely.
And which I believe is, the meaning of mentorship, permitting other people to learn from your mistakes.
Absolutely.
So that you can create a shortcut for them on their pathway to success.
Yes.
Yeah, so how do you define success?
Success. That's a good question. I think success is something that's really personal because one thing about me, I do not compare myself to other people. I think it's very, I don't know, I don't think it's life-giving because we're all unique. So success for me personally is being able to wake up and to pursue my purpose. Like what CHARA was put on this earth for.
I love that.
And that may mean I'm, working with a president, or that may mean I'm sitting home and playing with my son on the floor. It's all success to me because it's CHARA's journey. And I just want to accomplish what God wants me to accomplish on this earth in my time that I'm on this earth. And that's all that matters. Someone with the same background, went to the same schools, could be, working for a Fortune 500 company. That's great. If that's what God's calling them to do, great. It might not even be what their purpose is. It might just be the choices that they're making. But I just want to do what I'm supposed to do on this earth. Yeah. So that's success to me. Success is success in an office and success at home. But one thing is, I'm not satisfied with just success in an office. I need to make sure that things are good at home. I really believe, especially someone who comes from development background, if you work in a space where you're contributing to growth and change and impact, but then at home, it's a mess. I would not feel successful because charity begins at home. So for me, it's super important that my home life is as well. My son is doing well. We live in a peaceful home and not just peace at work and peace in the world and financial success. I need success in the home.
I love that. I love that because we have different areas, of our life. And, if I'm successful in one area and I'm not successful in another area, then it's not complete.
Absolutely.
So I believe we can have it all as well. And my definition of success, it's kind of similar to yours because I always say that success is fulfilling God's expectations of me. Because if he put some things in me, he made his investment in me. He has expectations, which is the assignment of my life that I have to fulfill. And if I'm in that way of fulfilling my assignment, then I'm being successful. And that's what explains the uniqueness of our successes, because, maybe someone is not called to do exactly what you're doing. So you don't have to judge them as unsuccessful because you're not necessarily doing the same thing. So we have to really get, that thinking right so that, we eliminate completely this disease of comparison, of people feeling unsatisfied with their lives, feeling unhappy all the time because they're comparing themselves, to other people, results or whatever, things they do in their lives, just focus on doing your own thing. I really love that. So there's a question that I love to ask my guests. Consider your world, the world, the entire world, your audience. That everyone is listening to you and you had one message to share, what would be the message?
Wow. I would say be authentic. Authenticity is so key. Being yourself and not transforming yourself to fit into any space, because it goes back to that whole uniqueness. I don't feel whole if I'm pretending. I mean, even though I wanted to be an actor, that's different because that's on a stage with a script and it's a character. But I want to be myself. I want to holistically be myself. So pursue authenticity. And if you're doing that, you're going to find your path. I don't think you can miss, because God created you, you know? We're all here for a reason, for whatever amount of time we're here. So continue to be your authentic self. And if you do that, you can't miss. You just can't miss the mark.
Wow. Continue to being authentic. Embrace yourself, your authentic self, the person you were born to be. That's the message. And that brings us to the end of our conversation. I honestly wanted this to carry on and on and on because it was such an enjoyable conversation, inspiring. I hope you learned one or two things. Thank you so much, CHARA.
Thank you for having me.
Being here with us.
I loved it.
I want another conversation.
Let's do it. Why not? Hey, it's just the beginning. We just scratched the surface.
I'm telling you, we're going to have more and more of this.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Keep being yourself. Keep inspiring all of us.
Thank you.
Keep inspiring your son.
Same to you.
And I wish you, all the best. Just keep doing what you do because you're doing it right.
Thank you so much, Irma.
Everybody, I will see you next time on the next episode on Conversations with Irma. Stay blessed, stay happy, stay grateful. I want to see a smile on your face. I know I cannot see you, but please smile every day, be grateful, because we have this one life to enjoy. We have this one life to be grateful. We have this one life to learn and to grow and to improve on ourselves. Until next time, stay blessed.